Disney parks have changed a lot over the years, and in this video I'm going to share a selection of rides that are no longer with us. Okay, starting off with Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. This ride still exists in California. It was an opening day attraction in the Magic Kingdom and it is no longer with us. It was slightly different in Magic Kingdom. It had 2 tracks instead of 1, which had different routes. So you had to really go on both sides to get the full experience. Don't know if that counts as 2 creds. But yeah, this ride is no longer with us and it was replaced with the Winnie the Pooh ride. Next we've got Snow White's Adventure. This was another opening day attraction and this one is quite iconic and quite well known. There was the famous scene where the witch turned around from the mirror and scared a lot of young kids. Speaking of scaring kids, this next one was a weird choice for Disney and didn't last, and it was Extra Terrestrial Alien Adventure. Basically a kind of dark ride sit-in room. Was a weird one. There was like an alien in this tube in the middle of the room that kind of, the lights went out and then things started tickling you and running around behind you. It wasn't overly well received. It did scare a lot of kids. It was rethemed to Stitch. I did the Stitch version of it. I thought it was okay, but it is no longer with us. Next is 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. This was based on the 1954 movie of the same name. Guest boarded submarines for an underwater journey. This was quite a long ride. This was around 20 minutes long. That's pretty long for rides these days, but it is no longer with us. It is now used for Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, a very different ride, and one I've been on. Then the next one that's no longer with us, maybe a little painful for some because it was only recently closed, and that is Splash Mountain. It has closed in both parks and it's currently being rethemed to Tiana's Bayou Adventure. It is set to open at some point this year. A lot of fans are kind of upset about this because, you know, we had the mountains. You had Splash Mountain, Space Mountain, Thunder Mountain. Now we don't. So be curious to see what this ride is like when it comes back. There's a lot of people worried that they are significantly reducing the number of animatronics and that it's going to be a very poor experience. In fact, I'm pretty sure the CEO did a walkthrough recently and said this is boring. So fingers crossed that the new version is improved before it opens this year. Another ride that was in Epcot and was perfectly themed to what Epcot was initially meant to be. I know a lot of people are concerned now Epcot isn't this kind of future thing that it once was, and that is Horizons. This used the Omnimover system that Disney is known for. They use it in so many rides. Slightly different. This was a suspended Omnimover rather than a kind of floor-based one. And yeah, this, as I say, tied in perfectly to the original concept of Epcot itself. Staying in Epcot, we have another ride that technically the ride is still there, but it has been rethemed, and that is Maelstrom, the boat ride inside Epcot that is currently Frozen Ever After? Frozen ride. It's the one where Elsa goes let it go and you go backwards. A ride I don't think I managed to get on is Studio Backlot Tour in Hollywood Studios. Now, the original version of this was 2-part. First part you were in the vehicles driving around, and then the second part was a walking tour. There was a version of this in Paris as well. It got stripped back and rethemed to cars, but the original Orlando version was removed in 2014 and is now where Toy Story Land sits. Another fan favourite that I have been on many years ago, because it's not been with us for many years, is the Great Movie Ride. Now this, as the name suggests, was themed to many movies, not just Disney movies. There were other movies in there. It was a mixture of props, sets and live actors. The ride is now rethemed to Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Mine Train, which many people think is a worse ride. I like it. I've been on both. I don't remember the Great Movie Ride that well, but the new version doesn't have live actors. It's much more screen-based, which I guess is a recurring theme with Disney these days. But yeah, the Great Movie Ride, which was a fan favourite, it's no longer here. This next one's weird. So Disney's known for having a people mover. At least they have a people mover in Orlando. They did have a people mover over in California as well. And they made the rather strange decision to retheme this and make it a high-speed ride. Now, the People Mover is not a fast ride at all. So when they made this rocket rods, they did decide it was going to go super fast. The problem is, for budgetary reasons and cutbacks, they didn't change anything about the infrastructure and the track. So the corners weren't banked. It couldn't take any of the corners at speed, so it would accelerate and slow down and accelerate and slow down. And all that did was put a lot of stress on the infrastructure, and the ride did not last. So rocket rods ain't there no more. And speaking of strange decisions by Disney, this next one I'm pretty sure was one of the shortest lived rides, and that is Superstar Limo. Now rumours are this was initially meant to be a high-speed ride. The theory was you were being chased by the paparazzi, you were trying to get away from them. But with the death of Princess Diana, caused heavily because of paparazzi chasing celebrities, the ride was seriously changed, and it was slowed down, and there were lots of extra kind of props put in. But from what I've heard, it just didn't make any sense at all, and it did not last. The ride is no longer with us. Now the next one is one that was reasonably controversial, and a lot of people weren't happy that they did this. Personally, I'd love to get on its replacement, and that is the Tower of Terror over in California. Now Disney has multiple Tower of Terrors around the world. They're all subtly different. The original one in Orlando, the cars actually leave the track and drive around on the top floor before getting back in the shaft and going up and down. None of the replicas have that. The Paris ones recently had an updated storyline. The Tokyo one has a completely different design, but the one that I'm talking about here is the one in California, which the ride itself still sits, but the original Tower of Terror was replaced with Guardians Escape. Personally, I think it looks fantastic, and I'm a massive Marvel fan, so I'd like to get on it, but I know a lot of people were upset that the original was removed. Next up is It's Tough to Be a Bug. Before you point out that this still exists, it does still exist in Animal Kingdom, but it no longer exists over in California, which was the cloned version. This ride closed and is now where Spider-Man Web Slingers sits. Another odd looking ride was Luigi's Flying Tires. Now this seems to be a callback to the original Flying Saucers attraction from the 60s. Effectively, you were sitting in inflatable tires that were sort of like mini hovercrafts and kind of bounced around. It doesn't look like there was any steering, they just kind of, you know, the cushions just bounced them around wherever, so it was very random. Sort of like a really slow and tame version of Dodgems. Didn't last, it's not there anymore. Another one that you would see a lot back at this sort of time period was the Skyway. Now there was two of these in both the Disney parks in America, but the one in California was quite well known because it went straight through the middle of the Matterhorn mountain. I'm curious about this because by today's standards, health and safety would have an absolute field day and rides like this just would not exist. But yeah, that was an iconic part of the parks to get around from one side to the other. And the last one I've got for today, now there are tons and tons of Disney rides. I may do a part 2. Let me know if you're interested in that in the comments below. The last one for today was recently removed, and that is Primeval Whirl. And to me, this was a really, really odd choice for Disney. And Disney is notorious for having heavy theming and, you know, all these beautiful rides. They do obviously have some flat rides. They've got like the Dumbo ride and Aladdin's, you know, magic carpet stuff, which are fairly standard rides, but they're heavily themed. This was effectively a spinning wild mouse. In fact, it was two. That was kind of one of its benefits, I suppose. Like for ride throughput, they actually had two rides side by side, so two different tracks. But yeah, this was just a glorified wild mouse that had a little bit of theming on it, and I don't think anybody was sad to see this go. That whole area is now set for some sort of redevelopment in the future. Disney's shown us a few plans, but they've not finalised any of them, and they've not confirmed they're actually doing things yet. So that kind of dinosaur area is probably going to change. But Primeval Whirl isn't with us anymore. Let me know in the comments below if you remember any of these rides, if there's any others that you miss. As I said, Disney has so many rides that they have shot over the years. This is purely a small selection. But yeah, let me know what you think, any that you really miss. Hit that like button. I have set myself a silly goal of trying to be at 10,000 subscribers by this time in 2025. So please help me out and hit that subscribe button. I've been Chris, you've been watching Coaster Dad, and I shall see you in the next one. Adios.